Hello everyone, this is Pico Entertainment and we are back again. I'm going to talk again now about Star Wars and the Clone Wars, and this is going to be my second part of what I consider to be the best episodes of the entire series. So as I mentioned within part 1 of this topic, I will be going into particular spoilers for the episodes mentioned. So again, if you haven't seen all of the episodes of In Clone Wars, I advise you to check out now, do some major catching up with the entire series, and then come back and watch this video. Okay, so spoilers are again going to begin in 3, 2, 1. So we continue now with this second part of the series with the Jedi who knew too much. This is from season 5, episode 18, and this follows the story from the previous episode called Sabotage, where the Jedi temple is bombed and the Jedi have to investigate what's happened here. And we have Ahsoka who interrogates a suspect called Lita Tumond, who is eventually killed when Ahsoka is trying to interrogate her, and she looks as if she's going to reveal the truth, and then she's all of a sudden killed. And security cameras, of course, are watching Ahsoka's interrogation, and this is where we see General Tarkin emerging again. And we know from previous episodes he's already very cynical about the Jedi, so he's already all too quick, if you like, to assume Ahsoka is guilty. Ahsoka realizing, of course, that if she gets arrested, that she believes the Jedi will not give her a fair trial, so she goes on the escape. And we have a terrific end sequence where we see Ahsoka on the run from the Jedi and the Stormtroopers, and there's a great emotional scene between her and Anakin right at the end, which is at the end of the tunnel, very similar, if you like, to The Fugitive, if you've watched The Fugitive starring Harrison Ford. And again, we get a great kind of back and forth where she doesn't believe that anybody will think she's innocent, and she asks Anakin why didn't he try and break her out of prison. Anakin mentions that would have made her look even more guilty. So I love the kind of emotional depth, and again, it just gives more weight to the relationship between Ahsoka and Anakin that has built up throughout the whole series, and it's really coming now to a great emotional halt throughout this storyline. So terrific episode, and I love the sequence, especially when Ahsoka escapes on here. You know, potentially this could have actually been a cliffhanger for the fifth season, but it went on to progress to finish the arc. And I go on to the next episode, which was finishing the arc, and that is The Wrong Jedi. This is, of course, season 5, episode 20, the finale of this season. Normally seasons were 22 episodes. This season was cut down to 20, and this closed off the arc, as I mentioned before, where we see the trial of Ahsoka for murder. Anakin does further investigation and finds out that she's actually innocent, and they come to that result within the trial. And the end part of the story is that the Jedi offer Ahsoka her place back into the Jedi Order, but she refuses and goes on her own path. And as I mentioned just now with the previous episode, we get a great final scene between Anakin and Ahsoka. She explains the reasons for her decision. This emphasizes the weight and the depth given towards Ahsoka and Anakin, and it's a real emotional feeling here as we see the breaking up of their relationship on here. And this emphasizes as well the great change in pace and tone within the series, where with the first couple of seasons are very much the standard escapist kind of Star Wars, and as season 3, season 4, and now season 5, we emerged a lot more into very much more of a serious, intelligent, more adult tone and more emotional tone. And that's what I loved about this particular finale, is that it was very much of a more somber ending. And at the time, you really thought this could be the end. We may not see Ahsoka again throughout this series, and it's just going to now continue on where we see Anakin and Obi-Wan, and we take the final steps towards Revenge of the Sith. So at the time, yeah, I thought we weren't going to see Ahsoka again, and I don't believe she came back in season 6 either. So it was only, as we all know, she came back later on within season 7. So just a great episode and a great finale and a great change in tone and pace throughout on here. We go on to next episode, On the Wings of Kidax. I hope I'm pronouncing that right. This was from season 7. This was episode 3, and this is us now 2/3 of the way through the Bad Batch arc, which I thought was terrific. And this, of course, involved Anakin and Rex teaming up together with a kind of rogue commandos known as the Bad Batch, and this is really in the midst of where they're having to escape the various droid forces, and we see that great set pieces in action as they're fighting for survival, and they're climbing up cliffs, and they're climbing over bridges, and they're jumping on various machines and animals as they escape the droid voices. So just great animation, great set pieces, escapism, what you want from particularly the Clone Wars. And this signalised the Bad Batch was really a terrific kind of arc to begin with. I mentioned before in my previous reviews of season 7 that whilst I felt the Bad Batch didn't need to be 4 episodes, I just felt it was a terrific action-packed story arc, and this was, I think, the standout episode of that story arc. We go again now on season 7, and as you know, particularly now, we're now going into what many deem to be the best story arc of the entire series, and this was the Siege of Mandalore, and this was the first episode, Old Friends Not Forgotten, season 7, episode 9, and this is really now where we saw the real serious intent of the showrunners to give everybody and fans alike that really epic conclusion towards the series. And we saw that intent where we saw, of course, the Lucasfilm logo at the beginning, and we had a different kind of approach in terms of the intro of what we saw normally within the Star Wars Clone Wars. I believe we had much more of the opening crawl, if correct me if I'm right, of what we saw with the opening intro, and this was great. This is where we kind of really see now how much they really enhanced the animation, and we saw the back and forth between Anakin and Obi-Wan. We had the opening scene where Anakin is kind of feigning surrender towards the droid armies before they take them out, and of course this is where we saw the reuniting of Ahsoka with Anakin. We saw previous episodes with the very controversial Martez Sisters arc, where of course we saw Ahsoka at the end of that arc join forces with Bo-Katan with the intent to take down Maul, who we knew from previous seasons had rule over Mandalore. Ahsoka asks Anakin and Obi-Wan to join her in the fight, but they can't. Palpatine is being captured or is under threat, and they have to concentrate more on rescuing Palpatine rather than helping Ahsoka and Bo-Katan take Darth Maul out. And this was just really a great episode. We had great scenes where the Clone Warriors acknowledged the return of Ahsoka, and we saw that they're wearing the orange marks on here. And again, we had great back and forth between Anakin and Ahsoka. We saw Anakin give Ahsoka the twin lightsabers, the blue lightsabers. Previously, she had, of course, had the green lightsabers, and this was great. And of course, we had that great set piece where they begin to infiltrate Mandalore, and we see at the end the emergence of Darth Maul from the tunnel. I've done a review on this. It's a great episode, and this is really the one that got fans super hyped for the Siege of Mandalore. And we continue that, of course, with the next episode called Shattered, for season 7, episode 10. And this is, of course, where we saw the Order 66 come into play. This is where everybody was getting so excited about. We had that great scene where we see Ahsoka really coming to sense now of what was going on within the events of Revenge of the Sith. We see, or we hear, like, the voices. I think it's Darth Maul and Anakin and Palpatine. If you know your Revenge of the Sith, this is of course the scene where Darth Maul goes to arrest Palpatine, and Palpatine fights back, and then Anakin chops off Mace Windu's arm, lead to, of course, Anakin joining Palpatine and turning over to the dark side. And this is, again, great. This is what people liked about this episode, because it showed it from a different perspective, how these events were being seen through the likes of Ahsoka. And of course, we saw Rex being influenced under the Order 66, and he managed to resist it just a little bit, giving Ahsoka enough time to escape. And later on, of course, she takes the inhibitor chip out of Rex's brain. We find out that's what was controlling the clones. And then we end the episode where we see them trapped in a room, as we see the shutter door being opened up, and then we wonder what's going to happen to him next. So just great episode. I've already done a review of this episode that you can see in my playlists for animation and within the Star Wars, the Clone Wars. So this was great on here, and again, just providing everybody what they wanted to see, that Order 66 taking on full effect This is where I was slightly critical of the fact that I felt we delved too much in Revenge of the Sith. I mentioned that again in my review of this episode. But overall, just a really strong and very consequential episode without this arc. We go on to the next episode, and that is Overlord. So we go back now. This is going back to season 3, episode 15. This involves Obi-Wan, Anakin, and Ahsoka receiving some sort of message, and they become stranded on this planet, and they ended up encountering powerful, very spiritual forces. We have old kind of warrior on here, and he has a son and a daughter. The daughter reflects side of good, and the son reflects the force of evil, and we get this struggle between the two, and Anakin reflects on his destiny as a chosen one, and he has to obviously make a decision whether to join the old man and kind of take over the role, or go back with Obi-Wan, and Ahsoka. And this was a great episode. This was really, again, as I mentioned before, a great change in pace within the entire series now, where we were kind of veering away from the typical more action set pieces, and we were tapping a lot more into a lot more of a deeper subject material. And here we're dealing with a lot more with the mystical and the supernatural, and we have a great scene where we see Anakin have memories of his mother, and he's questioning his role and his destiny, and we get that final confrontation where it's open kind of outside temple, and we see a great bird, if you like, conflicting, and we see Obi-Wan and Ahsoka getting captured, and Anakin's got to transmit the Force, and it's just great effects, great visual. I love it all. I love this arc, and like I said, it signified a change in pace. And we go on to the next episode, The Ghosts of Mortis, and this was the concluding episode of the Mortis arc, season 3, episode 16, I believe. And this was the really end part of what we saw on here, is when Anakin now had future visions. The son had taken over Anakin, was influencing him more, and we get that great vision. So we see what's going to happen if you like Revenge of the Sith, and we see Padme, and then we see Obi-Wan, and they come back together, and we get that line, "You are my brother, Anakin," and of course he's tormented, that we see shrouded cloud of Darth Vader in the end. Just terrific episode, and I love the ending of this episode where they trap the son in him, Anakin kills him, and I love the way that the father kind of gives out, because the previous episode, of course, the daughter had died and they had to revive Ahsoka, and his heart just gives out before, and it was a bit convenient because obviously Anakin had come to realization of his dark future, but they kind of erased his memory. That was just convenience throughout. They had to do that because, of course, we know Anakin doesn't come to the realization of his dark future too much later on. So what I love the sequence at the end when the old man dies, and then we see the breaking down of the temple, and the great visual blue light, if you like, of the temple shrouded down, and the great music. I love all that. And again, this is a great change in tone and pace of the entire series, if you like, on it. It was a terrific episode. I love the Mortis arc in general. So we go on to next, and we bounce back to season 7, and of course this is probably, for many Star Wars, Clone Wars fans, one of the best, if not the best episode of the entire series, and that's the Phantom Apprentice from season's episode 10. And this is where we get deep now into the heat of the Siege of the Mandalore arc, where now Ahsoka and Bo-Katan look to regain their control of Mandalore from Maul's forces. We see them, they confront Darth Maul, and of course we get that incredible face-to-face confrontation between Darth Maul and Ahsoka. And I've mentioned this already in my review of this episode. We have that great back and forth, how really there's a common denominator, there's a common bond between both of them, because they're both fallen from the established orders that they were given. Darth Maul, of course, being brought up previously within the Sith Order, and of course Ahsoka being part of the Jedi Order and then leaving because she was falsely accused of murder. So there was a great dynamic on here, great voice work by Sam Witwer. I always mention that great fantastic scene where the glass is shattered and we get that really horizontal shot between both of the combatants, and this culminates, of course, in an incredible lightsaber duel between them. And we know, if you look from the behind the scenes production of this episode, that they got the original actor who played Darth Maul, I think Ray Park his name, They got him back on there, and they did a lot of this fight sequence in motion capture. It's brilliant when you see the behind the scenes and you see how they merge the motion capture between the actual staging of the fight scene here. It's fantastic on here. The only real issue I had with this, and I already mentioned this with you, is that I don't believe Ahsoka should have won this battle. I believe really Darth Maul was really too powerful, despite the fact that yes, Ahsoka's had lots of training, and yes, we have seen that progression throughout the entire series. Darth Maul was still a Sith Lord. He was able to a lot of the time take on and compete with Obi-Wan, so really Ahsoka should not have been able to compete with him. That's a controversial point, but yeah, overall just a exhilarating, exceptional episode, epic fight scene. This whole episode pushing the envelope in terms of providing those cinematic thrills alike. Now we go on to what I believe overall is probably the best batch of the entire series episodes, and this goes back now to season 3 and episodes 12, 13, 14. And this is really an arc that really has culminated in one. I believe in the DVD or the Blu-ray extras, they did meld these 3 episodes into 1 hour long arc, if you like. And this involved the 3 episodes Night Sisters, Monster, and Witches of the Mist. And this involved Count Dooku betraying Ventress through the orders of Darth Sidious, as we mentioned before. Whenever he senses an emerging force or emerging presence within the force, he doesn't hesitate. He takes that forces out, and he orders Count Dooku to take out Ventress. She barely escapes, and she realizes that through Dooku's betrayal, she wants to take him out. So she retreats back to the Night Sisters, and we get a great visual here where we see Ventress's backstory and how she was a young Jedi in training, and her original master got taken out, and that how Count Dooku took her in and trained her all. There's a great visual as we see they're kind of through the memories, great visual shot on it, fantastic. And then we get a great choreography sequences where Asajj Ventress, along with 2 other Night Sisters, they go ahead to try and assassinate Count Dooku. They tranquilize him with a dart. I think it blinds him, but he can still sense and use his lightsaber on it, and just terrific fight choreography, just great action, great sequence, and I love it. And again, this is going back to that more darker supernatural themes within the show, just fantastic. We then develop on to the next episode, Monster, where they, after their failed assassination attempt, they try to trick Dooku by having the Night Sisters select a new apprentice, and Ventress has to go to Dathomir and select a few males from that group, and we see how they go through various parts of training. Again, great visuals where we see they go into this open kind of dark Shaolin like kind of temple, and they have to group together, and Ventress is kind of taking them out, and she whittles them down to the last 2 brothers, if you like, and one's a very strong warrior, and he's always protective of the younger, more naive brother, and he asks Ventress to leave the brother alone and take him on in a challenge. And again, great fight sequence, great choreography, and I love the music on here as we see Ventress and this other brother, if you like, fighting together, and the pillars are moving up and down, fantastic on here. And she realizes that he's the main warrior, and she takes him in, and this is of course where we see the origin of Savage Opress, and we get a really dark scene where Savage Opress in his new form strangles and kills his brother. See the more darker themes of the show in its evolution, and then we get a great scene, Savage Opress under the tutelage of Count Dooku, he takes on and defeats and captures the Jedi Temple. And we go into the next episode, Witches of the Mist. Again, great scene, and we see Dooku's intentions where he wants to raise Savage Opress and eventually use him to take on and take over Darth Sidious. I love the scenes where he's taunting Savage Opress and he's getting him to use the Force lightning, and he won't reveal all his secrets to him. Fantastic scenes on here. I love all that. And again, this is when I was very excited about Savage Opress, because I thought they were really building up to be the main antagonist of the series going forward. We get a great kind of turn where Anakin and Obi-Wan, they realise the emerging threat. They go to the Night Sisters, who eventually have to reveal their plan. I'm not sure why they did that, actually. I'm not sure why the Night Sisters couldn't have just kept that a secret and just let Savage Opress and Ventress take on Dooku, but I'm not sure why they revealed the plans to Obi-Wan. But we get great action and great sequence as Ventress and the press try to take Dooku out. Doesn't happen, and they eventually escape on it. So I think for me, an epic change in tone, a lot more darker, a lot more intense storytelling, again involving more those supernatural adult tone. This is when, for me, Ventress was becoming a really truly great character, and we would see later on further steps taken to redeem her in the season 4 episode Massacre on here. So I think for me, the amongst the best, if there was a best set of episodes within Star Wars Clone Wars, I think this is it. This whole trilogy of episodes where we see Asajj Ventress taking out Dooku, or looking to take out Dooku, and the origin and the creation of Savage Opress. So the last episode I'm going to mention, and this is really primarily more because it is the series finale, and that is of course Victory of Death. This isn't maybe perhaps the best episode overall, but I thought just it'd be more appropriate to mention this episode at the end of this video. And again, yeah, this was a sound episode where we reached the conclusion of the Siege of Mandalore arc. It involves now Ahsoka and Rex on the run from the clones, who of course under the influence of Order 66, and of course this is how we see Darth Maul, how he escapes, and because we know later on that all three, Ahsoka, Rex and Darth Maul, will come together later on in Rebels. So just great action, great set pieces, and of course this is particularly stand out from the final scenes where we see they've crash landed at the end, and we see of course Ahsoka showing remembrance to the clones, and we see the kind of helmets of the clones on the pikes, and just great visuals, great synthesized score on here, and just a further reflection on Ahsoka as she leaves one lightsaber behind and she veers away. And of course many fans love this episode because at the end we see Darth Vader years gone by presumably, and the whole planet is now under this snowy backdrop. Initially I thought it was Planet Hoth, but I don't think that was the case, and he sees a lightsaber of Ahsoka that she left behind. He lights it up, and of course he sees the clone helmet at the end on it, and this is kind of really just a footnote. I think more it was just fan service, just having Darth Vader show up at the end rather than showing the overall resolution of the show. I won't go into it too much more because I've covered it more already in my review of this season finale of Victory in Death. You can check that out on my channel as well. So again, just I think a sound conclusion to the series. Not quite what I thought it should have been, but overall just a very well put together and a very composed and a very sophisticated way to end the show. So those are my thoughts entirety now of what I deem to be the best episodes of the Clone Wars. Again, as I mentioned in part 1, let me know what you think in the comments below. Again, do you think some of these episodes I've mentioned don't deserve merit? Or do you think I've been pretty much spot on the episodes that I've listed up below? As I mentioned in part 1, let me know in the comments of episodes that you think should have been mentioned. And I may do a revision episode. I may touch base and review those episodes as well on here. But those were overall my thoughts on the best episodes of Star Wars: The Clone Wars. As I've mentioned before, I thought it was a very solid episode, or solid season rather, series with exceptional episodes, great visuals, and a great standard in CG animation. So those are my thoughts for now. Let me know what you think in the comments below. Please like and comment and subscribe and help me try to comment and grow this channel. I will be doing other series of my most favourite series, and I will do the best episodes in the future. But let me know of a particular show that you like, and if it's a show that I've watched, then I'll do a further breakdown of the best episodes of that particular show. So those are my thoughts for now on the best episodes of Star Wars: The Clone Wars. Let me know what you think in the comments below. Take care of yourselves, stay at safe distances, and I will see you very, very soon.